Some say that less is more. Tell that to a group of people with a name like this. Nonetheless, the premise is a simple one. You're a boy, you're handed a gun. The gun talks. Go save the world from giant robots and monsters. Today, we'll look at Super Mega Team's debut PC and console adventure and how it displays finesse that goes beyond mechanics. Through broken glasses, we look at Rise and Shine. You play as Rise, a young boy living in the world of Game Earth, a world that derives its charm from being an unabashed parody of video game characters and tropes. Your trusty sidearm's name is Shine, and he talks. The world has been flung into a state of war by the invading forces of the next-gen planet, and it's up to you to put a stop to it. If the idea of an armed youth befriending a normally inanimate object in order to save a parodic world sounds vaguely familiar to you, then you're not alone. Just last month, we covered Rad Rodgers on the channel, which possesses a similar thematic experience, though, in my honest opinion, after having spent time with both, Rise and Shine handles this theme way better. But first, what is it? Part puzzle platformer, part shoot 'em up with a dash of bullet hell for good measure, Super Mega Team's debut title on PC and console has been an absolute joy to play, and has quickly become one of my most anticipated titles of 2017. The demo I was sent takes roughly 15 minutes to complete. I have over an hour and a half on it, and that's not just because I needed footage. Gameplay consists of running and jumping, shooting waves of baddies, and occasionally taking cover from their fire before returning with your own. You can also dash in order to dodge incoming projectiles, but I found myself making use of Rise's double jump to dodge the various bombs and missiles that came my way, as it appeared damage was more likely to be sustained were I on the ground rather than in the air. The demo didn't feature traditional platforming a la Mario Bros. However, regardless, in those times where I did need to perform a hop or a skip, controls were extremely tight and extremely responsive. This feeling extended to the gunplay, which was suitably enjoyable thanks to the game's sound design, superbly selling me on the power of Shine as a weapon. Each and every shot out of that gun sounds like a blast out of a cannon, the recoil from which can be seen in how Rise is slowly nudged backward when repeatedly firing. Further adding to this sense of power, Shine emits an exhaust of steam when Rise reloads. It's a powerful piece indeed. Shine is capable of firing multiple different ammo types, two of which were in the demo build. The first was the RC add-on, which, when selected, fired a remote-controlled bullet that the player could then guide around within a designated area. Pressing the fire key once more while in control of a bullet, and you'll fire it off in whatever direction it's pointing. This was used in the game to hit out-of-reach switches or levers, or strike enemies in their weak points when they were exposed. It's a fine system and works well, though my only criticism is that it can be a bit tricky to get right. The tip of the bullet itself is extremely small, and you can't aim and move independently of one another while in this mode, which results in the occasional missed shot due to the feeling of being rushed. This could be alleviated if perhaps a red sensor of some sort was added to the tip of the bullet, which would aid the player in knowing the direction it was facing. It would also be on theme, since the bullet is homing in on radio signals in order to be manually guided at all. The second ammo type was electric. These perform the same as your standard ammo, but are used primarily to disrupt machinery, causing them to stall out or outright explode. Specific indicators alert the player to when this ammo type is to be called upon in various situations, such as boss fights. The result here is a fast and responsive system that allows for a bit of diversity in how one approaches combat, and it's a mechanic that really shone through in the demo's final boss bout, where all the abilities you learned were put to the test. I had no trouble switching between ammo types on the fly during this encounter, as all it required was a simple key press. and it made me excited to see what other types of ammo are in the final game, and how they'll be used to vary up the experience. The art design is absolutely gorgeous and is one of my favorite things about this game. Super Mega Team has gone to great lengths to ensure that there are no repeating tile assets as you progress through a level, by building backgrounds that consist of multiple parallax scrolling layers of complex hand-drawn illustrations. Such exquisite artwork and animation has become something of a staple of a Super Mega Team game, seen also in their previous titles Pro Zombie Soccer and Super Magical, both for iOS and Android, although the latter is unfortunately unavailable for sale anymore. With Rise and Shine, this art is taken to the next level, and the result is a visual treat for the eyes. If you can't already tell, I love this game. Beautiful art design and well-executed mechanics come together to form a very gratifying experience. But there's another facet to this game, one that, if done poorly, stood the chance of tanking the entire thing, despite everything else being so polished. What I'm talking about is the game's self-awareness. Much like we saw in last month's coverage of Rad Rodgers, Rise and Shine is as much a love letter to gaming as it is a parody of its culture. But in my opinion, Rise handles this with a kind of subtlety and, quite frankly, dignity that Interceptor's game is painfully lacking. When playing Rad Rodgers, I feel like I'm constantly being reminded of how awesome or cool everything is, and it's to the point where it feels less like a statement of fact and more like a desperate plea by the game for the player to like it. A scene where Rad is merely told where he is and handed a weapon is capped off by his compatriot looking into the camera and awkwardly saying,
"That, my friend, is how you do a cutscene."
And then there's that as well. The major difference between Rise and Rad is the premise, which enables the occasional fourth wall breaking and inside joke to occur in the first place. Rad is a little boy having an adventure inside a video game world, whereas Rise is a boy having an adventure in a video game world. Inside versus in is an important distinction to make. Rise lives in a world that simply is. He nor the inhabitants of that world are aware of being anything else to anyone else, and what will strike the player as humorous is business as usual for them. This allows for the game's parodic elements to be delivered gracefully and, for the most part, unintrusively. Unlike Rad, there aren't many moments in Rise where a finger is pointed and someone says, "Look at that! Video games!" I think I speak for many when I say that if you have to explain where a joke is or why it is funny, it's not. And Interceptor does a lot of explaining while you play Rad Rodgers. The difference in premise also influences the main characters themselves, specifically their likability. Rad is a boy who is keenly aware of the nature of where he is and what he can do there, which therefore makes him an annoying little
I hate school. I'm not going. Yes, you are, young man.
He doesn't appear to care much about what's going on around him. He just wants to blow stuff up. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that desire. After all, Doom Guy is one of gaming's most beloved protagonists for the same reason, but even then we can apply an emotional context to what he's doing that can be respected. Doom Guy is angered by the stupidity of his peers and doesn't care to hear their justifications or explanations. He doesn't necessarily want to unleash the biblical ass-whooping that he's known for, but will do it because he must. Rad, he doesn't care, talks too much, and he is a prick to his mother.
Rad, it's time for bed. You've got school in the morning.
I'll bet Doom Guy respected the hell out of his mom. Rise is the polar opposite of Rad as a character. He is a reluctant hero. He is scared. He knows he can respawn if killed, much like Rad does, but it doesn't influence his outlook. He's still just a little kid who gets teary-eyed when he finds his mother and is saddened by the loss of his friends in this war. They don't respawn like he does. Rise can only do it because of Shine. Remember, Rise's world exists as it is. It's not a parody to them. Death and loss are real, and it creates an emotional context in the narrative that makes Rise's badassery all the more fulfilling for the player. Finally, Rise and Shine's parody actually extends into the narrative itself, bringing the player into the fold in a way Rad Rodgers doesn't. Game Earth citizens put their faith in whom they call the Guide, and each individual on Earth has a guide attached to them. Shine explains Rise's ability to take down killer robots as evidence of his guide showing him how it's done. Guides are obviously a reference to the players, and it's a relatively creative way to induce a bit of fourth wall breaking without actually taking a wrecking ball to it. What's more, there's a bit of mystery to be uncovered in how Shine's ability to cause respawns doesn't always work for everyone, resulting in permanent death for them. It's possible that this hints at the narrative leading towards the revelation that Game Earth is being played by the Guides, and that Shine's potential inability to respawn Rise is linked to whether or not his guide is still playing. After having just watched Westworld, which told the story of artificial intelligences slowly becoming self-aware of the nature of their existence, video game characters suffering a bit of an existential crisis of their own could make for a compelling tale. We'll find out when Rise and Shine launches on PC and Xbox One, January 13th.